right, it is 12:05. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Natalie Barrera. I'm the Acting Director of Early Learning here in the Mayor's Office, and welcome to our Birth to 5 Illinois and Every Child Ready Chicago kickoff event. Thanks so much for joining us. Feel free to continue to drop your name and organization in the chat as we go along. We're going to start off with just some quick housekeeping. Again, thank you for joining us. First and foremost, we are offering live Spanish translation. And so we have an interpreter here with us today, Aaron Reyes. And I'm going to pause for 1 second so he can give instructions for folks for how to get connected to that channel.
Lynette, can you check to see if Aaron's already on the Spanish channel?
He is not. He should be able to unmute and speak.
Aaron, can you just confirm that you've been able to connect? I want to make sure that folks have access to that, to the channel specifically for Spanish interpretation.
Lynette, would that be something you can turn on? I only have co-host capabilities too. Lynette's now the host.
No, he is. He should be.
Yeah. All right, well, maybe he had to step away for a second. Natalie, do you want to go through the rest of the directions and we'll loop back around to him?
Sure. Okay, we'll get that squared away and we'll make time to make sure that folks can connect that way. Okay, so as you all probably know, this session is being recorded. So we will be putting this video recording up on both the Birth to 5 and ECRC websites. So look forward to that. We also have closed captioning available. So if you see on the bottom of the screen, you'll see live transcript with 2 CCs on top of it. So click on that if you'd like that to be available. It is through Zoom, so it may not be perfect. So just flagging for you all that some information may not come out as it was spoken. And then just want to remind everyone, we have allocated about 30 minutes for a live Q&A. And so we encourage you to use the chat box to submit questions. We have folks monitoring the chat box and we'll be able to answer them. And those that we can't answer, we can reserve towards the end. So I think that is it for our housekeeping. Aaron, just wanted to make sure, loop back around, are you able to provide translation instructions? Okay, I don't think we have him back on.
Yes, we can hear you on the English side.
No, we cannot. We can't hear him on the English side, Lynette. You're hearing him on the Spanish side.
If you choose your on your options bar, you can be under either the English channel or the Spanish channel, or you can have it completely off. If you have it completely off, you would not be able to hear. So if you go to the English channel, on the English channel, you can hear him.
Okay, so maybe you drop those instructions in Spanish in the chat, Aaron, so folks can get to the right channel. All right, well, that was fun. That's very, very COVID meetings, but welcome again, everyone. We're so excited to have you all in this meeting today. Before we begin, the mayor couldn't be with us today, but she did send along a message. And so we want to play that message for you now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and I am so pleased to welcome you to this important meeting, which officially kicks off the expansion of Every Child Ready Chicago, which will serve as the birth to 5 action councils for our city. As a city, we must ensure that every child receives a high-quality early education and provide them with the tools and opportunities they need to thrive for a lifetime. However, we can't accomplish this goal alone. That's why we are excited to be part of this collaborative effort, which is a great example of how the city and state can work together. By investing city and state resources to lift up shared priorities, we will be better able to ensure that our youngest children and their families have the resources that they need starting at birth to succeed for the rest of their lives. When we work together, everyone wins. This is a great step towards aligning and coordinating a fragmented, siloed system. Without a network of quality learning programs supporting its workforce, the city of Chicago cannot thrive, much less provide critical support to families when they need it most. So we need your help to build a better future for our families and early childhood providers. So thank you so much for being a part of this effort. I'm excited about the great work that we will accomplish together on behalf of our children and their families.
And we now have a message from Birth to 5 Illinois.
Hello, I'm Dr. Carmen Ayala, the Illinois State Superintendent of Education, and I am just so pleased to welcome you to this kickoff event to learn about the new and exciting 39 Birth to 5 Action Councils that will be launched across the state. The council regions are based on the geographic areas of the regional offices of education. These councils are being created in direct response to recommendations made by the Governor's Commission on Equitable Early Childhood Education and Care Funding. You know, I was a member of this commission along with 30 other community leaders. And as we received input and feedback from over 500 parents, providers, community members, and advocates, it became very clear that there is a need to systematically engage families, providers, and community members in our planning and policy making to create a fairer, more equitable early childhood system. As a former kindergarten teacher and bilingual program administrator, and currently a grandmother to 3 children that are early childhood aged, I completely understand firsthand the importance of high quality early learning to set students up for success. We need your help, and I hope that as you hear more about this initiative today, you will want to join in and make Illinois the best state for families raising young children.
I'm Grace Ho, Secretary of the Illinois Department of Human Services, and I'm so pleased to participate in the official introduction of the 39 Birth to 5 Action Councils. These action councils are strongly aligned with the mission of the Illinois Department of Human Services to strengthen Illinois by building up lives and communities through integrated networks. This new regional system is being intentionally designed to ensure that families, practitioners, and community members across the state, especially those whose voices historically have not been heard, are engaged in the process of identifying needs and developing solutions to address those needs. In order for the councils to succeed, we need a diverse group of stakeholders, community members, parents, and family members, childcare providers, elected officials, and early learning advocates who are committed to transforming our early care and education system to serve on our Birth to 5 Action Councils. We hope we can count on you for your support and participation.
Greetings. I am Dr. Jamila Jordan, Executive Director of the Illinois Governor's Office of Early Childhood Development. And on behalf of the GOECD team, I am pleased to welcome you to this Birth to 5 Illinois virtual regional kickoff event. Governor J.B. Pritzker established an audacious goal that Illinois will become the best state in the nation for families raising young children. As recommended to the governor by the Early Childhood Funding Commission, one important step that will bring Illinois closer to achieving this goal is the establishment of regional councils across the state to lift up family, community, and provider voice. Ensuring all children and families have access to the services they need will require a wide range of stakeholders working together in every community in Illinois. Parents and families, business and community leaders, early childhood educators in every early learning setting, from school district officials, Head Start program administrators, child care centers to family child care programs and advocates. This is an opportunity for local residents to come together to address the early childhood needs within your own community. We trust you will join us in this important effort to center family and community voice and transform early learning in Illinois. Thank you and be well.
Awesome. Let's get our presentation back up. That is the extent of our kind of technical needs. So I think we should be good from here on out. And again, thank you for your patience as we kind of kick this off. But here's our agenda for today. We're going to start off with an overview of the Birth to 5 Illinois team and what they do. We're going to talk a little bit about the Every Child Ready Chicago group and initiative and why we're integrating. I know that that's why folks are here and what they want to hear, kind of what is the reasoning behind that and how we'll work together. We'll share some information around the partnership, specifically thinking about membership and how folks can join the expansion of this working group. We'll introduce the work we've done to date around our family council. So the work that we've done with some key stakeholders around getting that up and running. We'll introduce this very exciting initiative called Chicago Early Childhood Integrated Data System, or CECIDS for short. And then, like I said at the beginning, we are dedicating 25 to 30 minutes for a live Q&A. And so we really hope to engage in conversation with many of you and answer any questions you might have. But that is the plan for our time together.
Thank you, Natalie. For those who I have not met yet, my name is Cicely Fleming. I am the director of Birth to 5 Illinois. We welcome you here, and we're excited to launch this partnership with Every Child Ready Chicago. So just a little bit about Birth to 5 Illinois. We are a public partnership with INCRA, the Illinois Network of Child Care Referral and Resource Agency down in Bloomington, who many of you all I'm sure have heard of. As the speaker said in our video, we are launched based on recommendations from the Governor's Funding Commission that wrapped up its work last year. And our role is pretty simple. We are going to launch 39 action and family councils throughout the state of Illinois using the map that you see here, which essentially are the ISB boundaries for the regional offices of education. And so while we're not affiliated with those offices, those are our geographic boundaries for our councils. And the councils we've made up of a variety of people, as we'll talk about a little bit later, but really trying to bring the provider and the parent voice to the policy level. And so there'll be policy folks, providers, parents, local elected officials, other community members who really will come together to become advocates around expanding quality early learning experience in their region. And so this will allow the state to actually have a better idea of what is happening in the region, and not simply based on data points, but really based on the perspectives and experience of our parents and providers. So they'll provide that information. They also will then work amongst themselves to figure out how to expand those services in their communities. And so this is a really great initiative. It allows us as a state to make sure we're reaching every child in an equitable way. Our team will look to provide funding in each region. So we do have funding for staff in each region. This is key because a lot of our local collabs that do exist now and other advocacy groups will tell you that the funding is key. If you don't have funding, you don't have staff, you really can't meet your goals. And so that is a little bit of also what makes our initiative a little different. We launched this back in February with a variety of meetings. We've been working with Chicago since I came on board about 6 months ago to try to align our work with what's happening with Every Child Ready Chicago. So we're excited to finally get to this point. We will continue this initiative. You know, it's kind of grassroots, and so we'll probably learn and grow and change as we've done since this was founded, based on what we hear from the community. We can go to the next slide, please. So I wanted to just introduce you to our state team. A lot of the folks are on the call today, but just so you have an idea of who's who, as I said, I'm Cicely. Jess is our project coordinator. Sonia, who's on the line now, is our director of operations. Maggie, who is also on the line now, is our communication staff manager. Angela is working through our grants and relationships piece. And so Angela, you will hear a lot from later on this season as she is putting together our local collaborative funding. Dina also is on the call as our community and family engagement manager. And so she'll be going around the state to make sure we engage people in an authentic way. David, her peer, is not on the call, but will be on this evening. And then Corinne is working as our area coordinator for Area 1, which includes Chicago. So Corinne has really been our boots on the ground as we've staffed up and gotten everything together in the state office. And so you can engage with them here in the chat, or you can also engage with them through the website if you have any particular questions for them. Next slide, please.
All right. So what is or who is Every Child Ready Chicago? So in the fall of 2020, the mayor's office, in partnership with Start Early, launched a new working group and charged them with creating a strategic plan that would build a coherent, cohesive prenatal to 5 system so that all families and children could have access to the resources and supports that they need to thrive. And this effort brought together diverse stakeholders, including researchers, advocates, program leaders, city agencies, parents, providers. We had so many folks at the table helping us to think through how we build this strategic plan. And ultimately, the goal was to ensure that every child in Chicago enters kindergarten ready to learn. We know that that's critical. And so with the help of a consulting group called School Readiness Consulting, we launched a series of meetings where we began to kind of really think through and operationalize what a plan could look like. And so part of that work was identifying the existing efforts underway. We know that there are a lot of folks doing great work across the city. And so part of that was building what we call a landscape assessment to really identify all of those initiatives. And then we also began, based on kind of what we were seeing, to identify strategic priorities, many of which align with what you might be familiar with related to access, to funding, to leadership, to workforce. And so we created that initial vision. We had a plan that really was a starting point for our strategic plan. And ultimately our goal was and is to build a strategic plan for the city that really makes sure that all services are available to children and families throughout the city. So that is a little bit about Every Child Ready Chicago. If you can go to the next slide. And so again, recognizing the work that was already underway in the city, the Birth to 5 team and the mayor's office met to explore what alignment could look like. And so after much discussion and conversation and engaging the ECRC working group in thinking about this potential alignment, we decided that it made sense that instead of creating a whole different table with a lot of the same players, that we would expand the working group to meet the needs of the Birth to 5 Action Council. And so while you're hearing about these 2 separate entities, ECRC and Birth to 5, it will be one. ECRC is expanding to be the Birth to 5 Action Council for the city of Chicago. You can go to the next slide.
I feel like we should have had some confetti or something for that for the announcement. That was our big announcement. And so just kind of, you know, for Birth to 5, obviously, as I said, we're new. We really want to approach this work out of respect for what people have already done. We know the $1 million question that we always have is, what does this mean for local collabs? And we need them and want them to still exist in the sense of Chicago, where it's already covering the same geographic area. As Natalie said, it makes sense for us to leverage the resources we have and expand the network that they have to make that the Action Council for the state. So here just kind of shows you the goals that we already have. So obviously on the left are racial equity, family voice, and collective impact, which are the goals that Birth to 5 have set up. And then the Every Child Ready Chicago values really are pretty similar. So they have equity, diversity, inclusion, transformation, transparency, and accountability. And so you can see there already, as we're two separate entities, it really makes sense for us to come together because we have pretty much the same values here. So there, we weren't able or weren't needing to change as two separate entities to become one. Next slide, Maggie. And then if you look here, we have our shared vision, right? Again, so as we were making our mission, and as Every Child Ready Chicago already had their mission and vision, they really align. So you see, we're all talking about equity, family, community, and voice, centering people who maybe haven't been centered before. And so basically, this is a really great graphic to help you understand if our goal as Birth to Five is to reimagine a more equitable early childhood education and care system that ensures family and community voice is centered and prioritized at every level of decision making in Illinois for the state, then it matches what Every Child Ready Chicago is doing, which is making sure every child in Chicago can thrive within well-supported families, effective programs, and well-resourced communities so that they grow, live joyful lives, and realize their greatest potential. So again, it took a little work, but really organic for these two entities to come together as we have the shared value of supporting our students and supporting our families across the city. Next slide.
Yeah, and so just to reiterate for, why ECRC makes the most sense to serve as the Birth to Five Council. Again, we've been meeting since the fall of 2020. We have a vision, we have an initial assessment, initial priorities. We've hosted shared learning journeys to do deep dives into areas that are really impacting the workforce. And so we had a lot to build off from. And so it made sense for the Birth to Five team to really align with ECRC so that we could collectively work towards these shared priorities. And so we believe that this partnership will really support greater cooperation and coordination between the city and state. We know that that's critical. We know that by both kind of providing resources, both in staff, but also just other supports, that we are able to ensure continuity for the work and lift up shared priorities. And then lastly, the city of Chicago already invests in early learning collaboration throughout the city. And we know that that's an area that the Birth to Five team is going to build on. And so we also thought it made sense that we kind of leverage our collective resources to make sure that we are able to reach all children and families across the city. So you might be asking yourself, who is on this Every Child Ready Chicago working group? On our website, you can see all of the members' names, but we wanted to talk a little bit about what does it mean to be on this Action Council membership. So obviously it is a membership for the city of Chicago, so you have to live, work, or receive services in the city. This is a voluntary unpaid role, except for family and caregiver representatives. And so those folks will be compensated for their time and participation. Folks who are on this council are people who have the time, but also who are able to act on the work, right? We need doers. We need people who can commit to attending meetings, reviewing materials, but also taking action, whether that means sharing information and resources, helping draft policy recommendations. The work will look different, but we need folks who are willing to do the work. This is also an opportunity to folks to make recommendations to help us leverage resources, connections, and influence to address the issues that are critical to the field. We know that there are many, and we know that we can't do it alone. And so we really are leaning on our membership to help us do this work. We look to our members to disseminate information, to really serve as ambassadors for the council and promote the vision, right? So we know that folks have connections on the ground to their local communities, and this is an opportunity to really help filter information both top down but bottom up so that everyone is aware of the initiatives, of the opportunities that are taking place. And then, we want folks to leverage their networks, again, to share information, to gather information, to inform planning efforts, and to make sure that the conversations that we're having are grounded in the real experience of families and providers on the ground. So that's a little bit about the council membership. So again, kind of thinking through who is on the current working group, what you see listed here are different folks from the sector that are represented. represented. And so I've mentioned we have folks who are providers, whether that's home-based or center-based. We have folks representing the Child Care Resource and Referral, so Illinois Action for Children. We have data and researchers. We have folks from the philanthropic sector. We have government agency representatives, including DCFS, CDPH, IDHS, CPS, DFSS, GOECD. So we have a lot of those key leaders at the table. We have advocacy organizations, we have parents, we have parent voice. That's been critical for us. So a lot of the folks who have been participating in ECRC have varied expertise and lived experience with the early learning system.
And so as we come in as Birth to Five to build on what's already happened in Every Child Ready Chicago, we have a framework, and we want to be flexible, but we have a framework of voices that we want to bring to councils around the state to make sure that the expansion of quality early learning isn't just seen as a provider or a parent or a mother or grandparent opportunity, that really we bring in a lot of stakeholders. So as Natalie said, trying to build upon what's happening in Chicago, we looked at the list and thought through, there's always more room and space for for parents and families. And so wanted to expand that voice. Also wanted to expand on the collaboration. As Natalie mentioned, we're going to be funding some collaborations. There are lots of collaboration in Chicago that Every Child Ready Chicago is already working with, but there's always room for more local collaborations. Also, the home visitor early intervention providers have been very vocal and very active and know a lot, particularly coming out of COVID, that we need to make sure we build upon. And so bringing them, there was already a recognized voice there from CPS, Office of Diverse Learners. And as we as a state have been charged with the priority populations identified by the state, it's going to be super important that we make sure we highlight that voice and experience, as well as expanding on family child care. Again, coming out of the pandemic, we know that family child care played a huge role in caring for students and will continue to do that. So we want to make sure we expand their voice here as we move forward. And then the business community in a lot of ways has become recently engaged in childcare, again, with coming out of the pandemic and the need for care. And so we've had some connections across the state and want to make sure that we expand that here in Chicago to see how they can help us expand the service provision across the city of Chicago. The state has a selection process that we've worked with Chicago to kind of adapt for them. And so if you've been on our website or you get our emails, you see that there's an interest form we've been using across the state. There's one that's a little bit more modified for the city of Chicago that will be launched at the end of this session. And so if you're interested, you fill any of these roles here and you want to apply or you want to share this, please do that. Natalie and I will work through this first batch, since it's a smaller group of people we're bringing on the first time, to use kind of an equity matrix, because as she said, we want to expand the voice, but we want to make sure we have not only equity by where you live in Chicago and what your perspective is, but we want to make sure we have equity in terms of people who are just coming into the advocacy world, people who have been in the advocacy world for a long time, a lot of different things we want to consider. So Natalie and I will be working together to look at those interest forms and appointing or suggesting people to be on the council. And then, as I said earlier, this is new for us, right? So we'll be evolving. This will be our first round. For sure we'll hear from more people. We hope to have lots of applicants. And then as Natalie and I work together and the current working group come back to meet together as Birth to Five Council, there'll be some more decisions about how we can continue to expand the voice of the council. But the goal is to make sure it's inclusive. And I do want to just mention that if people are not kind of quote unquote on the council, there is still plenty of engagement that we'll be doing, both the Birth to Five team and Natalie's team, to make sure that anything that the council is looking at, anything the council understands also is out into the community, so we can make sure that the voices of the community are brought into this work as well. Next slide, please. And so what we're looking at for the state is really enrollment, right? And so the state has a pretty big goal of enrollment. Many of you all probably know we lost a lot of students after the pandemic who haven't returned back. And so we're really looking to do a few things here. State overall, these are pretty wide. And so each region will be able to kind of customize them as they need to, but we want to look at our infrastructure, make sure it's coordinated. We know a lot of parents have a hard time just figuring out how to get into early learning experiences. We want to make sure we're looking at data. And so obviously we'll go into that with CECIDS. Chicago's a little bit ahead, but making sure we understand that data and the council understands that data. We want to make sure we plan for expansion. So what does that look like? And that planning is going to be really key, because we want to make sure that planning is based on provider and parent voice, not just data points, but we understand why there might be a wait list somewhere else or why parents have dropped off other programs. And then again, our overall mission, I think we're both entities, is make sure we have authentic engagement, family voice. And so family voice is really at the table designing the next steps for expansion in everything that we do. And we will get to that point right now, family and community engagement.
So thanks, everyone. My name is Carmen Garcia, and I'm with Start Early, and I'm pleased to sort of kick us off giving a quick overview of sort of the work that has occurred related to family and community engagement, and then really sort of offer a glimpse into some of our next steps. So next slide, please. Thank you. So in September of last year, the Family and Community Engagement Group in Chicago was brought together to really think through what a family council could look like. So just thinking about a sort of parent-only space. So ahead of the launch of the meeting in September, a colleague of mine at Start Early, we actually did several interviews with a variety of community groups, organizations, and collaborations in Chicago, really to understand what the landscape looked like related to family and community engagement across the city. And we did this across several different community areas. And then ultimately, you know, the Family and Community Engagement meeting was launched, and it is co-facilitated in partnership with Janet Vargas at Illinois Action for Children, Jesse Rojo with Community Organizing on Family Issues, most often known as COFI. And we sort of really took the groundwork of those initial interviews with the community groups, as well as taking a look at some of the other existing initiatives that the state has, such as Raising Illinois and the Family Advisory Committee of the Early Learning Council. So these were pretty pivotal in informing some of our work. And really now that we were able to take a look at that, the Family and Community Engagement Group has been really dedicated with participation of various members representing over 14 different organizations across the city, and then also including parents at the table. And I see many of our meeting participants are actually joining us on the call today, which is great. And then our decision-making has been by consensus. So it really makes our discussions and conversations rich because we are considering all different sorts of viewpoints, often those that sort of fall outside of the majority. So right now we are meeting through April, and then we will be winding down and really producing our recommendations. And then once those recommendations are shared, there will be a planning process to think through what implementation could look like. So there will be more information in sort of the coming months. Next slide, please. So with the launch now of the Birth to 5 Illinois team, the Family and Community Engagement Group in Chicago has really worked, again, as has been mentioned, in sort of partnership to just ensure that there is, in fact, integration and alignment with the Family and Community Engagement team at Birth to 5 Illinois. And really, we've had a great partnership because the family engagement team with Birth to 5 Illinois has been attending the family and community engagement meetings we have hosted, and we've been able to really have some good opportunities to have discussions. But really, this slide really goes over the components on where we have had some shared goals and sort of where we already see alignment, right? So I'll sort of go over these a little bit briefly, but we know that the Family Council will serve as an advisory committee to sort of the larger Action Council, which has got, what over in depth a little bit earlier. It's really, to share critical input and give feedback. And we're hoping too that families will have an opportunity to leverage their networks. So whether that is formal or informal, to share the critical issues that are impacting them. They'll have an opportunity to, raise gaps and identify issues, again, that are sort of happening within the community. So with that, I'll actually turn it over to the Birth to 5 team to cover the next piece.
Thank you, Carmen. Hello, friends. I'm Dina Chapman, Family and Community Engagement Manager for Birth to 5 Illinois. I just wanted to briefly lay out this slide, which speaks to the commitments for the Chicago Family Council. We are looking for folks, parents, caregivers, family members that represent diversity in families. So we're looking for all different types of families to be represented on the family councils. Understand that this is a paid leadership role. So the participants, family participants, caregivers, parents will receive a small stipend for their participation. With regard to the terms of service, we're looking for folks that are able to commit 1 to 2 years. So the first year, everyone would commit to that and have the option of buying in for year 2. And finally, we are looking for folks who are willing to share their lived experiences. So what has impacted you on the early care and education landscape? Like, what has personally been your experience? Now, you're willing to share those experiences in this group setting. So in a nutshell, those are the commitments with regard to the Chicago Family Council. Thank you.
All right, and we're close to opening up the Q&A. So thank you for your patience as you're doing a lot of listening. So I appreciate that. The next few slides really provide just a big picture overview of what early childhood looks like in the city. I do want to preface this section by saying it is a snapshot. It is not a deep dive into all of the critical data that we have available around all of our early learning systems. And so we know folks love data, but we just want to kind of ground this conversation in some key data points that we think are critical. And so again, you will not see a breakdown by program type or funding stream, but we recognize that that data is important. And we'll talk a little bit about the efforts underway to get us more visibility into some greater data. So if you go to the next slide. All right, so what is early childhood like in the city? We know that the city of Chicago is a significant portion of the state's early childhood market. And so when you think about the city, we have we have 193,068 children 0 to 5 in the city. All of these data points came from our landscape summary that is available on our ECRC webpage on the Chicago Early Learning website. We'll share that afterwards. But in case you want to see where this data comes from, you'll find it in that report. And so when you really think about it, the city of Chicago has 25% of the 0 to 5 population compared to the rest of the state. And so that's really important and that's huge. We're also very rich in diversity, right? And so in the middle graph here, you see the breakdown by race and ethnicity. You can see that more than a third of the Latinx children 0 to 5 live in the city. And then you can also see that nearly half of the Black children ages 0 to 5 that live in the state. And so we really are rich in diversity and our people are our greatest assets. When we also think about language, you know, about 1/3 of Chicago residents speak a language other than English at home. So Spanish is the primary language spoken, but we also have many other languages that are spoken throughout the city. And so that's a great asset for us and something that we definitely celebrate and acknowledge. Can you go to the next slide? And then part of this work is also acknowledging the ways in which there are significant barriers to health and well-being that are built into our systems, right? And so what you see here is a little snapshot of the ways in which we are just not doing enough for our communities. 25.5% of children ages 0 to 5 in Chicago live in poverty. You can see the racial ethnic breakdown under that, which is unacceptable. And we have a lot of work to do collectively to really address these issues. We see that the median income is $58,000, which is less than what it is for the rest of the state. In the middle here, we're really thinking about healthcare inequities. So almost 40% of women do not receive adequate prenatal care. And we know that that is critical for building foundation of well-being. And so that's definitely something that we want to address. We know that access to health insurance continues to be an issue for families. And then lastly, on the right-hand side, really thinking about the percent of babies that are either born too early or with low birth weight that can potentially impact healthy growth and development. And so, you know, these are some ways that these highlight, I think, some of the challenges that we are facing across our systems as a city. And then just to close out, we also recognize that the workforce is super critical for the system, right? That the adults that work with children and families have the greatest impact on their overall health and well-being. And so we try to break down a little bit about, you know, what does our provider landscape look like? And so under Fast Facts, these are data points that came from ICAM 2020 data. So you can see the licensed center-based sites, the number of sites, and then the capacity. So we have 448 center-based sites for the capacity to serve 34,151 children. For licensed family child care homes, we have 992 who serve 10,654. And then the CPS has the capacity to serve 15,500 students in 775 full-day pre-K classrooms. We also want to acknowledge the rich diversity amongst our workforce. So compared to the rest of the state, Chicago has the greatest racial diversity among teaching staff. Now, these data points are specific to licensed center-based childcare. So 43% are Black, 30% are Latinx, 19% white. And then we also have the highest rate of bilingualism, right? So a lot of providers actually speak another language besides English. On the right-hand side, we speak a little bit to professional development and degrees. So at the top, you'll see that Chicago has the highest rate of staff with completion of a college degree than the rest of the state. And we break that down a little bit. So you'll see that 85% of licensed center administrators have a college degree, all the way to 40% of family child care owners and providers. So I'm not reading every data point to you, but you know, again, this is recorded and will be on our website in case you all want to reference this. And so while we have a great workforce, we also recognize that there is a lot that we need to do to continue to increase our workforce and to compensate them for their work. And so if you think about a recent study or work done by the Chicago Early Childhood Workforce Partnership Employer Council, they estimated that Chicago needs 3,000 new and 1,000 upskilled early childhood educators by 2024. And so again, this is another opportunity for us to really leverage our collective expertise to really think through how we can make sure that we are preparing and compensating the workforce to meet the needs of children and families. So that was a quick overview. And now we want to talk about a new initiative that the city has been leading for the past couple of months. So I'm going to hand it over to Christina to walk us through these next slides.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I can see people are already starting to ask questions. They're getting to the Q&A, Catherine and Susanna. So I know my presentation here is in between you all and answers. So I will try to make this quick. I'm Christina Krosov, and today I'm fortunate to be presenting on CECIDS. I'm going to share with you what that means here. I'm a consultant in the early childhood space, and I've been working as part of the CECIDS project funded by the McCormick Foundation initially, and now it's been integrated and stewarded by our both city and state friends. So next slide, please. So let's start with the basics. What is CECIDS? It is Chicago Early Childhood Integrated Data Systems. We all love our acronyms. It is the future. It is a cloud-based platform. It's the same technology that big companies use like Amazon and Google. It's the same thing that allows you to track your FedEx packages. It's that unlimitless cloud real-time access to information and reporting. And it allows for easy integration. So gone are the days of trying to marry Excel files or this data set with this data set in your computer over the weekend. This is the future. And we've been very fortunate. It builds on a success of a prototype that CPS and especially DFSS. I know Deputy Commissioner Saretho Burgess-Bennett is on this call. They were the guinea pigs for a year, really doing the hard work of setting up this initial integration of data. And now in this stage of the work, we've expanded to new partners. It relies on public-private governance, and I think that's important, and that is also represented in the way that it's been funded. As I mentioned, the McCormick Foundation, along with Crown Family Philanthropies, provided that more flexible, innovative funding to first do the research on what Chicago needed for an integrated data system. But since then, it's also been the investment has also come from City Hall and the mayor's office, as well as the state of Illinois. And so we heard from Dr. Jordan at the governor's office. They too have invested in CECIDS. And part of that, I believe, is because of the fact that it will serve as an asset to Chicago's Birth to 5 Action Council and could be a best practice or kind of a leg up in being able to use data as part of these action councils. It is an ongoing effort. We have not solved things. We are continuously improving. And so part of why I'm personally involved in this work is because I believe I live my life by a Maya Angelou quote, when you know better, you do better. And so the idea is that we continue to know better and so that we can do better for our children. Next slide, please. And so it is really about the children. I know data in the past has been used in all sorts of ways, from compliance to even punitive ways. We're really changing the tone, or trying to change the tone, and how data is used for children, being able to have a comprehensive view of their needs across neighborhoods in Chicago, being able to understand where there are quality experiences and where we could invest in them by investing in their instructors and their programming. And also related specifically to this conversation for communities, there's an appetite politically, socially for further investment in our early childhood, in our babies. How do but it's not going to rain hard anytime soon, right? So how do we continue to leverage those incremental investments that we do hope come in here in Chicago and do it in a way that's transparent and prioritized based on where we see community needs. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we're kind of leapfrogging into the future here. Many of you might remember pulling out a map when you're trying to get on the road and highlighting your route and then things going wrong and that being part of the adventure. So in that similar way, CECIDS is not just kind of a data warehouse. It's actually much more than that. It's a smart, new, interactive reality. So the analogy here is kind of going from a two-dimensional map to, next slide, to a kind of more interactive way for you all, again, to when you have better information at your fingertips, better and more accurate, more reliable, more comprehensive, more real time, you can do better. And in particular, do better in collaboration with your peers. Next slide. So that collaboration, again, going back to this idea of a public-private shared responsibility for doing better for our children. Here is the governance structure. I know there's a lot on this slide, so I'll just break it down quickly. NIU is our hostess with the mostest. They, as many of you know, they host the part of the Illinois longitudinal data system. And so they are a great nexus between Chicago and the state of Illinois' data work. And they will be housing this cloud-based environment and integrating all of the early childhood data for Chicago. They are essentially hired to do that work by the data governors. And so that includes those who are contributing their data in Chicago and our state friends, INCRA. And so CPS is contributing data, DFSS is contributing data, and the newest Head Start grantees are also contributing data as part of this. And so in addition to that data governors tier, also in the spirit of collaboration, because that's the name of the game today, being mindful about connections to the Action Council here, as well as other key leaders and key voices that we want to engage with. As I mentioned before, it is an ongoing process, and so we'll want to be prioritizing how we approach new data sets and the insights that we curate together going forward. And I think that's all I had. Natalie, did I miss anything? Oh,
Nope.
I did. The time when?
You want to preview this quickly for us?
I always mess up. All right, so this exciting new reality, this future is upon us. We did this winter, we set the foundation, which is to secure the legal data sharing agreements and to help start onboarding the new data governing organizations. And to even take some of the new data tools that had been developed as part of the DFSS prototype and socialize and share those. Now we are on the brink, I think is next week, of turning on each of those data governors will have an operational dashboard that they can see and help to have their data mirrored in an integrative way. By the summer, we're looking to have a comprehensive citywide view. I think that's going to be the bee's knees, and looking forward to continued conversations with this growing body about that. And then fall is all about shampoo, rinse, and repeat. We'll be looking at the existing data and collectively making decisions of how we can continuously improve and do better for the next season.
Now I think you're done.
Yeah, and do you want me to take, there's some questions that came in. Do you want me to?
You know what, I think if you can, we're going to get into the questions. There was a question around data. And so maybe can you just clarify, I think Sarethel did as well, but wondering if you can clarify kind of the way in which CECIDS is using the program level like data system to help create this citywide dashboard.
Yeah, and this isn't just for Chicago. Statewide, different organizations, different providers use different systems, right? There's COPA, there's Child Plus, there's even Salesforce, and some are even homegrown. When it comes to being in that future state and integrating data, we're kind of agnostic to what system you use. We just need to conform the information to match how it's organized in the cloud. And so, yes, there is, COPA is in the mix for Chicago. There are several providers who are currently on COPA, but there's also providers who are on Child Plus. And I think Salesforce is also in the mix. So we'll be building a pipeline to the NIU cloud-based platform from each of those. Did that answer the question?
I think so. And there's a few more if we just kind of keep on this data point since folks are asking. Can you see them or do you want me to read them for you?
I can see them. Betty, will the data show how many children are enrolled? Yes. And how many slots are still available across CPS and CBOs? Yes, and yes, the real-time nature of this, that's kind of the point, is so that we're not lagging all the time in our insights. What data will be available? Sylvia, I think probably today's quick update is the drive-by version. We could share with you, and Natalie, you tell me the best way to share, either individually or part of this group, like a long list of data elements that are being included. That list exists.
Yeah, and I think something that we've considered is having like a CECIDS focused kind of shared learning journey for the working group. So that's also something we can explore to just to give folks greater visibility into what that citywide view will look like.
Yeah, and there's also, Sylvia, the other thing that there's been workshops to kind of get into the under the hood of both the operational dashboards and the citywide view. So those are all available. The recordings and the presentations are all available. That's a easier thing to share too, for some quick, deeper dives. With CECIDS integrate with visit tracker, so home visiting, that's on the wish list, and so that's part of the shampoo, rinse, and repeat. It's not in the initial views. It's a different type of data set, so it requires a little bit more engineering, but we all know it's important, and so that would be part of the prioritization that we will go through beginning in the fall. Can you share those resources with everyone? I love the demand. I love it. I love it. Yes, I'll work with Natalie.
Yeah, we can get it out. And we're also trying to update the website. So there is like a CECIDS specific page on there as well. And so that'll house a lot of this information. And so we'll share it beforehand, but also know that our intention is to create transparency into all of these initiatives. And so hopefully you'll see that over the next couple of months. I think those were all the questions related to data.
Yeah, and CECIDS is a little bit like Disney World. Like, you're going to have a good time, but you need a plan and you need like a handler. So I'm happy, in addition to the materials that we'll share out that are at our fingertips, I'm happy, just reach out to me or via Natalie somehow. I'm happy to just sit with you and have like the casual 101.
Okay, and obviously if you have more data questions, we can come back to them. I'm trying to go through the chat because I know there were other questions. How many EC collab members will you add to the council? Can you talk in more detail about how you plan to integrate collabs who are not on the council? Okay, and Susanna, I don't know if you wanted to come off mute and say anything around that, or if
Yeah, I'm just curious, as we're the Untitled Riverdale Early Learning Coalition. We have not been at the ECRC table, so just kind of curious how work from more kind of hyper-local collabs will get integrated into this work, and how many local collab members you'll have on the council.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Cicely, feel free to jump in, but I think part of what we're less, or at least I'm less interested in the number and more into the reach, right? And so part of the work has really been to understand how many early collabs are actually up and running throughout the city. Obviously, the mayor's office has visibility through its work with Action for Children into some of those early learning collabs. And that is why we've created space within the council and why it's explicitly in the interest form that we are recruiting for early learning collabs. So I would ask all of you to share it widely. And if folks are interested, definitely apply. I don't know that we have a rigid number yet. It's more about representation and capacity to serve on this council. And so we'll make determinations. I mean, if there's like 30 councils we never knew of, we'll obviously have to think about what a structure could look like. But I would say at least 4 or 5, which seems to be around the number of collabs that are up and running in the city right now. So I don't know if that answers that question, but Cicely, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that's probably the same as Susanna. I know we spoke very early on about this. So yeah, ideally, if all of them want to get involved, we make sure we have some that represent different geographies of the city and are serving different populations of folks. But as I mentioned before, being on the council is one thing, and many people might be interested, but really what the council's goal and what the staff and Natalie's goal will be is to make sure we expand that reach, right? And so even if people don't have capacity or interest in actually being on a council and going to another meeting, their perspective is super important. So everything that the council will be discussing will be information that we also are getting from the field, right? And so we will involve local collabs in that way, whether that's, kind of a focus group subcommittee, a short-term task force or something like that that might happen to make sure we get the point and information we're looking for. Those will be decisions that the work group make about how to engage people, but definitely the engagement will be key whether you're on the council or not. There's another question. I can just go ahead since I'm talking. Can you clarify between the parents that serve on the Chicago Family Council and those that will serve on the Standard Advisory Council? Will 1 or 2 parents from the Family Council also sit on the advisory structure? So I think I can start that one, but Dina or Carmen jump in. I think that there's going to be one council, and so I think Carmen's slides talked about the work that have been done to date. And then Dina kind of talked about where we're going to model from the state side. That will be one family council. We're also looking for parents to be on the action council. And so that the family council might be, 15 family members of the diversities that Dina brought up, but then there will be some other parents who can serve on the action council. And based on, again, parent and family interests, we'll figure out if people kind of do double, if they're interested in that, or how we kind of expand that grouping. But again, making sure we're also going out to the community for that authentic communication.
And can I just flag, just for context for the folks, for the ECRC working group and folks who haven't been at the table, this came from feedback that we received from the working group that it was important and critical to have voice at the working group but also to create a separate space where family and caregivers could come together to really think about what policy recommendations or proposals they wanted to push forward. So it was a both and not a let's just have a few voices on the council, but let's build a community like structure that responds to family voice, and let's also have representatives be on the action council. So we had a goal of having 20% parent caregiver representation on that broader ECRC working group / birth to 5 council.
Yeah, and then just to sort of continue on that thread about will the parents who sit on the family council also sit on the advisory council? So in the recommendation, there is a proposal of that because we think it'll just help with feedback and collaboration, but what that will look like in implementation, is sort of yet to be determined. Also because the working group, the ECRC working group / what will become the Action Council has already been convening, right? And the family council, so the parent only space has yet to be launched.
Sandy, your question around geographic representation from across the city. Carmen, do you want to speak a little bit to how we've thought about that for the family council?
Yeah, so that's a really sort of been a critical conversation for us because we know the city is just so vast in just geography and then also in representation within that geography. So we do have a map that we have voted on in our group, and the map actually divides the geographic area or the community areas into geographies, right? So that is what will come through in the recommendations is selecting, I should say, representatives from sort of those divisions within the city.
So there was a question asked early on, so I'm trying to scroll up to get there. By Sylvia, what are the goals of the council? Does it have decision-making authority or is it just advisory? Who makes the decision? Do we have staff? So essentially for this partnership and for Birth to 5 overall, it is advisory at this point. And so this was a directive of the governor. We will be, as I said earlier, working throughout the state and working here in Chicago to make sure we get provider and parent voice in terms of what needs to happen to advance early learning experiences throughout the city of Chicago. ECRC has already been working with their work groups, so they have some other goals that they've already established that they will continue to work on. The staffing will be a shared model, so the state will bring in staff, Natalie will be the staff, and then they will share kind of the leadership of this work group or the Action Council. And so there is a budget on the state side, mostly for staff, but also for supportive things that the council needs to work. We also have the contract with Illinois Action for Children, so there will be some training and technical support that's offered to the Family Council as well as to the Action Council that will come from the state's budget. Now they can speak to our own budget. And then in terms of priority, the state's priority really is to increase enrollment. And so the work group will kind of help us figure out what that means for the city of Chicago. And so it's going to look different for every council around the state, which is why, again, it's important that we have providers and parents letting us know their experience. But the state's goal is expanded enrollment. And so we'll be doing a lot of the look at the data, building on the data of CECIDS, as well as the data that the work group's already looked at to see what the data says about enrollment, but then also matching that with the qualitative experience from parents and providers and what they talk about in terms of what their desires for enrollment are. And then the other work, Natalie, do you want to speak to kind of the other scopes of work that's already happening in Chicago?
Yeah, so for the folks who are on the current working group, you've seen that we've hosted a number of meetings that are outside of just looking at enrollment, right? And so we have initiatives in the city that are underway like CECIDS and hope to also launch other kind of more issue specific work across the state. And so while the state might be super hyper focused on enrollment, which we are too, I think everyone is, we also recognize that there is intersectionality in the work, right? That we can't talk about enrollment without talking about staffing issues, without funding. And so we'll be thinking through, part of the work will be to how do we really build an action plan that addresses enrollment, but also takes into account all of these other implications that are kind of built into that. And so we'll be working with you all to help us think working through what that plan could look like.
Then looks like, okay, so let me try to clarify the staffing. And so the state has a staff that we have funding for 3 staff actually in each council. Then Natalie will be the staff for Every Child Ready Chicago for this time. And so it will be a shared partnership, right? That the goal here is to, as the mayor said in the video earlier, to make sure that the state and the city are working together to expand services. And so we will be working through how to share those responsibilities. The ultimate decision maker will be the council. So the staff will be like the facilitators, will make sure everyone has the data and information they need, will convene the meeting, but the decision makers will be the council. And ultimately on the state side, the decision maker will be the parent and the provider who tell us what they need. And the council will be the advocates and the ones who kind of move that work forward. So
you just said the council was advisory.
Yeah, but in terms, so there's, right. So, but in terms of decision makers, so it's, when I say that, it's like, with the council decides to look into and, you know, want information on, that will be their decision, right? So they will lead those decisions in terms of their scope of work.
By council, do you mean this body of everyone that's here? Or is there another council that
I mean, the Every Child Chicago work group.
But you also, you also just said it was advisory. And B, now you're saying it's decision making. I'm just trying to get clarity to understand.
Let's not make decision makers. I think that's confusing. I think similar to the statewide, the Early Learning Council, where you all, you know, the council can propose recommendations. That is what you will be able to do. You will not have authority. The council will not have authority over funding levels. They will not have authority over specific policies. It is advisory in nature, and so I want to be clear about that and not be, not confuse folks, and and make promises we can't keep. And so if there are formal recommendations that the council agrees they want to pursue, promote, elevate, that will be the type of decision making within that recommendation, but there will be no formal decision making around funding or policy at this point right now.
And so then I'm just trying to get clarity then, who makes ultimate decisions? I mean, I've heard this shared model, but that's not giving me clarity on who ultimate decision makers are.
I think the ultimate decision maker are the same people who are making decisions now, right? So we are trying to gather information that we can present to decision makers, whether it's CPS, DHS, the same entities, and then they still have the legislative purview to make those decisions.
I see.
And I would just add to that, that the point of bringing different decision makers to this table is to also create opportunities for dialogue, whether that's CPS leadership, whether that's CFS leadership, the mayor's office. Like, there are different leaderships at this table that we think is important and critical to influence decision making. And so we're hoping that this will be a vehicle for that.
Thanks. I also asked, what's the frequency of these meetings? And how often will this body meet?
Yeah, so we're working out a timeline for a meeting cadence. There will be opportunities to engage again in meetings that may not be specific to like the enrollment issue, the enrollment focus of birth to 5. And so you'll get those invites, and those are, if you are available and interested in the issue, you're welcome to attend. For example, we're hosting a Chicago Early Learning info session tomorrow that's open to the working group, not required, but again, another resource of information. But we will be putting out kind of a cadence over the next couple of weeks. I think there was another question.
Yeah, there's a question. The City of Chicago's 5-year contracts for PFA and PI funding will be ending in 2 years. Will the council be looking at who handles the RFP and who will administer?
I think if that's a point that's agreed upon as something to pursue, the council could submit a recommendation, but again, it will not be able to make any decisions around City of Chicago contracts around PFA or PI.
And Natalie, there was just a request that you share the information for tomorrow's meeting.
Yeah, I can do that.
Looks like that's all the questions in the chat. Does anyone have another question they want to just verbalize or put into the chat? We appreciate you all's patience. As we said, this is, an organic process. We want it to really be led by the council. So there will be some things that we likely will learn along the way, and we ask for you to be patient as we adapt to your response.
Last call for questions. Oh, and Maggie just dropped in, there were, I think, a few questions that were submitted beforehand. And so there's the response to that, not specific to this presentation, but we still wanted to provide a resource.
All right, Maggie, do you want to put up our last slides here? We can close out. All right, so the next steps on getting involved here. So as we mentioned earlier, there is a Google form if you're interested, really just looking for your contact information, a little bit about what population or perspective you represent, your entity you're representing. The Family Council, they continue to meet to plan everything out there, so that will be coming soon. But if you have families or folks you think might be interested, please feel free to gather that information. You can send it to Natalie or myself. We are hiring now, to get back to that staffing question. And so that job is available online through the link here. I believe that Maggie will put the links in the chat as well for you. And so as we kind of gather more people and expand the work group, as Natalie said, working through calendars, trying to get a meeting set and bring staff on board, we'll be back in touch via email with the time and date for people to start meeting, and as well as another meeting for Family Council when that application, or excuse me, that interest form goes live. I'm sure there'll be information that's held through a meeting there for you all to refer families over to. Natalie, do you want to speak to your workforce survey?
Christina just dropped it in the chat, but do you want to do the plug, Christina, if you're still there?
Yes, I'd love to. And some of you are already familiar with this. There is a huge opportunity for us to examine how equitably we compensate our early childhood teachers. We know that that's the biggest driver of quality. And so there's a survey right now. The survey result will only be as good as the amount and volume and depth of participation. So please share the link with your staff, with administrators and teachers and family child care providers. We want to get all those voices in. Doesn't matter if you're center-based, doesn't matter if you're private or publicly subsidized. We want to get a comprehensive view. Please take a minute. It's 20 minutes or less to fill out the survey. Teachers will receive and directors will receive, will be in a running to receive $100 gift cards. Thank you.
I think this is me, but here are just a list of resources. You can see Chicago specific FAQ on the Birth to 5 site. So you'll have that available. You can visit the birth5illinois.com website to learn more. You can also visit the Every Child Ready Chicago webpage to see what the working group has been up to. We have a list of the current working group members. We have recordings of previous meetings and notes. All of that is on there. And so if you're just curious to learn more about what we've done these past couple of months, definitely visit that site to give you just greater visibility into the work that we've done over the past few months. And this funding opportunity is back to the Birth to 5 team.
Yes, and so as I mentioned earlier, Angela is working through funding that we have to distribute throughout the state for local collaborations. And so we hope to get that up and available in the next month or so. And there will be lots of information on our website as well as coming out via email. And so if you're interested in that, please pay attention, and Angela will do some webinars and education around that. There was a question about this recording. It will be available. I imagine Natalie will send it out to her list. We will send it out to anyone who signed up on the Birth to 5 Illinois website interested in Chicago. And then the job posting will be on our website. I imagine Natalie will get that out as well. It's also on the INCRA website. So please send over folks who might be interested in applying for this opportunity. And then we thank you for joining us. I think that's the end of our presentation. We appreciate your time and your interest.
Yeah, thank you. You'll see all this information in your inbox, all of these links, and then look forward to working with you all as we kind of think through the next steps in this process. Have a great day.